Hello from Power, and in today's video we're embarking on another railway adventure combining Train Sim World and Train Sim Classic for a Trans Pennine Express service from Manchester Airport to Carlisle. We'll start in TSW and Alan Thomson Simulation's Manchester Airport Commuter DLC to take us to Manchester Piccadilly. Then, with another ATS creation on Train Sim Classic, the Chatmoss line will take us on towards the West Coast Mainline, where we will continue south of Wigan, northwestern to Preston. And finally, back to TSW and Just Train's incredible West Coast Mainline overshaft to complete our run today to Carlisle. And this part of the journey we'll see incredible views over the stunning Lake District. Sit back, relax and enjoy the ride. So hello, welcome to Manchester Airport Station. We are on Train Sim World and we're going to be taking a Trans Pennine Express service to Carlisle. It's the 0904, so we better kind of get things underway really pretty quickly. Let's get those doors unlocked. So we're going to be a few seconds late, I think. Let's get the headlights into marker. That should do us. Desk illumination kind of doesn't really make much difference. You can barely see it anyway. And then get everything set up AWS wise.
TPWS and AWS operational.
So this is the 0904 service to Glasgow Central, and we are going to go as far as Carlisle today in part one. A bit of a Train Sim World and Train Sim Classic combination. It's only a short journey on the Alan Thomson Manchester Airport Commuter Route to get us as far as Manchester Piccadilly to begin with. This, of course, a reskin that's available on the Creators Club website. So we're going free roam as far as Manchester Piccadilly is concerned. So just mixing this into the normal timetable. And then we're going to go into Train Sim Classic for the run to Preston. And we'll do that using the Chatmoss route and the missing link route, both of which are Alan Thomson Simulation routes. Oh, there's a plane coming into land. So a couple of things to say first of all. We are driving a 802, and of course I think if you're very familiar with this particular service, you'll know that usually it is a class 397, but of course that isn't available in the game. But having said that, it's not uncommon. I'm saying not uncommon. I've certainly seen pictures of 802s running this service, so I don't know how often it occurs and whether it's kind of like a day-to-day thing or whether it's really occasional, but it certainly has happened. And the other thing, of course, to say is that the route itself, in real life, will stop at Oxford Road and then we'll go on towards Bolton and join the West Coast Main Line after that. And of course, we don't have the Bolton route in Train Sim Classic even. So we will be taking the Chat Moss line, and it's a slightly longer route to get onto the West Coast Main Line. But again, I know for a fact that there has been diversionary services where that has happened in real life, so it can be a thing occasionally. And if you're very eagle-eyed, then you'll also spot that the unit numbers that we'll have on this service, on the Train Sim Classic ones, will be kind of different, but I'm not going to kind of go in for massive accuracy in that respect. So we are stopping at Manchester Piccadilly, then Oxford Road, Preston, Lancaster, then Oxenholme for the lakes, of course, and then Penrith for the lakes. We kind of got the South Lakes and the Northern Lakes. And then after Penrith, it's Carlisle. So at some point, if I get round to doing part 2, then there's a slight debate on as far as that goes, because I could actually do the straight run from Carlisle to Glasgow on Train Sim Classic, or we could kind of go to Newton and then do a little bit of a diversion to get to Glasgow Central on Train Sim World, but we'll see. I've kind of not quite got to that stage. We've got quite a few scenarios and bits and bobs that I'm in the process of looking at, trying to create, so there is no massive rush in that respect. So we did get a single yellow there, so presumably we have a stopping service behind us. Getting over the motorway there. I mean, what I love about that, and I think seeing it at slower speed, we got a chance to observe that, but it's not just the fact that the motorway's in there and traffic on it as well, but you saw all the road markings accurately laid out as well, and I think it's little things like that that just make this game sometimes just so realistic. I think I'm right in saying I think it's that building there that we got a screenshot of, and immediately somebody worked out exactly where this route was going to be based. And it's provided already a great deal of enjoyment for me on Train Sim World 5. I have to say, this Manchester Airport Commuter Route, can't quite see that signal yet. No, it's still on red. I'm just kind of ambling up to it. Can't remember if the TPWS works on this properly, but I think I need to be going less than 15 miles an hour just to make sure I don't get caught out. Usually when I'm doing the live streams, it's things like that that I do get caught out on. Right, it's changed to yellow now, so we're okay. But there's a great amount of variety. I mean, it's a short route, but it's a really good one, and I really enjoy it. I just love, as I think I've said on quite a few videos, but really would be fantastic if we could somehow join up. I mean, we have the All Aboard Studios route coming up from Crewe to Birmingham New Street, so that's going to have Crewe all laid out in its glorious size of it all, because of course it's not just a huge station. You've got the massive Basford Hall freight yards as well. But I kind of love to see a little bit of a combination going on. Because I think this route, it would kind of feel like as though it was a full route in its own right, and there would feel like a real point to doing a service, whether it was local, whether it was a Pendolino service, but to be able to do Crewe to Manchester would just feel just nice. And we do have a waiting red signal, so I think we can definitely say that's red. Sometimes, I don't know whether it's all the mods that I've got installed, but you can, there we go, it's changed to amber now. But sometimes you could look at signals and you can think that an amber signal is actually red. And I sympathise with drivers in real life, because you have sometimes a real blinding light. You must be looking into the sun. It must be tremendously difficult, but they vastly experience that, of course. And of course there are some signals, I know you get those repeaters, but you get some signals that come out of absolute nowhere. But we only got a single amber there, so we have to be a tad careful. I presume we're stuck behind 323 stopping service. Oh, you got a house there with the solar panels on as well. Right, so now we've got double yellow, so presumably it's not quite an all stations service. There are extra new gantries as well in this route that, you know, each I mean, although essentially this is 1960s OHLE, you kind of do feel as though in certain areas there is a slight variation. You have particular gantries that you don't see in other parts of the country, and there's one or two unique little posts that have been put in, but there's such a variety as well. I mean, you know, I think for the unobserved you would say, well, an OHLE gantry is the same, but they are so different. It's good to see a good deal of accuracy put in. I think this this Slade Lane junction has caused a few problems. Trying to be good with the speed limits. We're about to join up with the West Coast Main Line proper into Manchester Piccadilly. very, very nice, it has to be said, in Trans Pennine Express livery. Lovely livery, I think. This is the... I know that's an Asda in real life. And although they obviously can't put the branding on it, I think it's great to see the fact that it is a proper supermarket, and I'm not sure if it's definitely a custom build, but it looks the part. And again, it's little line side features like that that matter such a lot, because if you travel on the route a lot in real life, and you know, I've done it quite a few times over the years, and I've certainly noticed that Asda, you kind of want to see something that looks realistic. I mean, this to me is fantastic, the run into Manchester Piccadilly itself. And if you've watched my videos long enough, you'll know that one thing I have been shouting out for, or crying out for a very long time, is to have Manchester Piccadilly to Stafford via Stoke. Via, you know, obviously we've got Stockport in the game now, but by Macclesfield, Kidsgrove towards Stoke-on-Trent and Stafford, that would be. Of course, that's my local line. I think everybody wants their local line to be modelled. You know, sort of in between Stoke and Crewe, really. So I'm looking forward to that Crewe to Birmingham. So we have a single yellow. That's because there is a 323 on the platform. Now in reality, I have a suspicion that this wouldn't happen, that you would be held at the last signal, because it would cause a little bit of confusion passenger wise, because you kind of got this situation where people are thinking, well, why can't I get on the train? Why can't I get on the train? This is Manchester Piccadilly. So I think we'd have to make an announcement at this point, and be something like, ladies and gentlemen, please, we'll shortly be arriving into Manchester Piccadilly. We are just waiting for clearance into the second part of the platform, so please don't try and disembark from the train, because the passenger doors are still locked at the moment. We have a train waiting ahead of us, but we will be very shortly entering the platform proper. So just bear with us a second and we can get the whole of the train into this platform at Manchester Piccadilly. And at this point, of course, we're looking on that train and thinking, when is it going? If we can tell, we should be able to tell from the boards. So I've got a suspicion we're going to have a slight continuity error, because I think that the service that we leave from Manchester Piccadilly will go on time, whereas in reality this is slightly late. Yeah, it says it's the 09:22, so we should get out of here very quickly with this 323. His doors are closed, so he is off. Yeah, so we should get it change. There we go. Change to yellow. Or probably more accurate to say amber, I suppose. So yeah, I think magically, time travel and all that, we're going to make up the few minutes late that we are here into Piccadilly with our next part of the journey, but I'm sure you'll hope you'll forgive that little bit of inconsistency. Just get up to the end of the platform. Try and be in roughly about the same place as we have when we get to the Train Sim Classic version of the route. So whilst we're kind of waiting for a moment, let's just have a quick shuffle as to what's happening in the main platforms, as we're on the through platform. We've got a Pendolino arriving. We've got another Pendolino waiting. We've got a 323 departing. I hope very much that ATS put a mod in fairly soon which allows for the cross-country services. Okay, we're only going to be able to drive to Stockport, but that would be add an extra little excitement to this route on what's already very good. And I'd love to see the Hadfield Glossop route modelled as well. So that's part one, and in just 2 seconds we will be rejoined at Manchester Piccadilly for the next part of the journey. Okay, so welcome back to Manchester Piccadilly. Now, for all the fact that this is a very, very old Dovetail Games route, this is part of the Liverpool-Manchester route via Warrington, this section. Ultimately, we're on the Chatmoss line, which was built by Alan Thomson Simulation, but there's a lot of recognisable buildings. I mean, that's the is it the McDonald Hotel, I think? We are on the outside platforms. You've got the I think it's the old fire station, and certainly a very recognisable building there in the distance. The one thing you can absolutely guarantee if you stand on the outside platforms for any length of time is that you are going to see a freight train coming through, which is always a pleasure. So this is Class 70. It'd be a lovely loco to have in Train Sim World, wouldn't it, this? Our 802 now, and looking very resplendent again. Cab looks slightly different in here, it has to be said. So I've turned the sounds up a little bit with it being Train Sim Classic. There's always a little differing of the volumes between TSW and Train Sim Classic. You just have to make it a bit louder. It's a very long intermodal service, this, and hopefully I've overcome the time issue, because I've kind of kept this held for a while so that we should be starting around about the right time that we ended the TSW run. I mean, maybe a few seconds difference, but I'm sure you're not going to be too worried about that. We are stopping at Oxford Road. It's a fascinating piece of line, actually, this bit between Piccadilly and Oxford Road and Deansgate, all on the viaducts. And now we can go up to, well, we'll go up to 35 technically, and then it comes right down to 20 miles an hour again. A hard one just to get exactly right. You got the 25 marker there, but that was for going over the points, and then as you can see, this is the 20 marker as we enter the platforms at Oxford Road. I mean, that's a 170 in Northern livery on the right, but I think it's standing in for a 331, which of course we don't have in the game. And very, very interesting architecture, I always think, Oxford Road Station. Ease it up towards, don't think there was a 5 carriage marker, was there? Ease it towards the 6 carriage marker. But although it's the kind of, this section is the Liverpool Manchester original DTG route, you can see it's benefited by the upgraded catenary that has come from the Alan Thomson pack. So again, feels pretty authentic. And I have to say, as a kind of an alternative, I mean, I'm getting to the stage now where I actually prefer to do all the runs in Train Sim World, just basically because you can actually just turn the game on and play them, whereas, you know, this involves often downloading loads of different reskins. Slightly modded scenario I've used, I've kind of inserted this in myself. This is of course Deansgate. You've got the used to be the Granada Studios nearby. This is very much Coronation Street land if you're from this part of the world. So this is kind of the point. So at this point on the left, that's the line that deviates off towards Liverpool Lime Street via Warrington Central. And then you've got the junction coming up on the right, which veers off towards Manchester Victoria. And we are missing out, as I was saying, the real service normally on a day-to-day basis would be going via Bolton. In fact, I think we're obviously missing a bridge there, aren't we? Because there's a bit of hanging foliage. Probably find I haven't got the very, very latest version of the route installed or something like that. But you'll definitely see, if you look, do a bit of a Google search, you'll find that there have been services that have been diverted on the Chatmoss line, and then eventually we'll come to Parkside Junction, where we'll rejoin the West Coast Main Line, and at that point we will then be kind of just south of Wigan. So it says approved. I think there might be a couple of Bolt signals. As I say, it's most likely I've probably got a slightly out-of-date version of the route. There's probably some patch somewhere that fixes this, or probably if you reinstall the Armstrong Powerhouse signals patch, something like that, but not too worried about that. And you can now see examples of the newer style of OHLE that, of course, this part of the route fairly recently electrified. Of course, the Chatmoss didn't used to be electrified at all. So I think we go through Patriacroft, I pronounced that right, and Eccles, and quite a nice looking motorway to our right. And then a northern liveried 319. It's slightly longer going this way. It's very much a shortcut going through Bolton. Love to see that section modelled in one way, shape or form at the moment, because it's missing from either Train Sim Classic or Train Sim World. I think the problem is the more of the UK network that we get, the more you want, and it's kind of like, right, they've done this bit, we now need this bit, and it takes time. That's the problem. This is part one of the video. I'll have to think about part two and to get us up to Glasgow, but that might come in the future. Well, there we go. We've got a 175 in the old kind of Arriva Wales livery, long before Transport for Wales came in. Quite like the Transport for Wales livery. Of course, Arriva buses are still very much a thing, and they operate in my area around Shropshire. Worth mentioning as well, we are on the Chatmoss line, and this is real bit of railway history, because of course Liverpool-Manchester on this Chatmoss line was the very first intercity route built in the world, and it presented tremendous challenges because Chatmoss itself basically a bog, and they thought, well, it's impossible to drain the bog completely, so they laid 70,000 cubic feet of spoil. They dropped it into the bog, and used empty tar barrels sealed with clay. So it was a bit of a test, and this was back in 1829. They ran George Stephenson's rocket over the line, and it worked. It was okay. They were carrying passengers, and of course it's still carrying passengers to this day. And nowadays locos, I believe, 25 times the weight of rocket are used. I just find it fascinating that this old technology, and I suppose that there were people who were probably scoffing some of these ideas at the time and were probably expecting that the line would sink in about 6 months, and here we are, sort of you know, more or less 200 years later, and it's still in existence. And it's tremendous credit to these old engineers. And you know, Stephenson was obviously a big pioneer, Robert Stephenson and George Stephenson. And you know, you think of Brunel, who we've talked about many times. That's just warning us that we've got a 60 miles an hour speed limit coming up, but only 0.7 of a mile, so we're in no great rush for that. I mean, I've said before, but I mean, I love the cab view videos, but I kind of love that precise information, really. It's like, you know, if you're driving this, at what point do you kind of put your brakes on, at what level, what are you looking out for, because they'll look out for certain landmarks, because you do get the advance warning, but it's, if you put your brakes on down to 60 immediately, you would end up being way off schedule. It is a while since I've done one of these combined train sim, classic train sim world combinations. But I just love the fact that you can follow routes, and that you can actually do these things. And I think sometimes, I mean, it's nice in this case that we've been able to start off in Train Sim World and we'll finish in Train Sim World. But I happen to think that this bit in between is really nicely modelled. The latter stages. I mean, it calls it Loughton Junction. It's a bit confusing because it starts off as it's Parkside Junction and then becomes Loughton Junction, but I think it's kind of Parkside Junction on the Chatmoss side, and then Loughton Junction when we get to the West Coast Main Line bit. Quite got to the stage of thinking I'm going to uninstall Train Sim Classic completely yet. I mean, it's not that often I actually drive on it at all, but it's still got nice things that you can do. And I think this sort of route kind of shows off a little bit the advances that have been made. And you know, when I did that sort of Exeter Plymouth one, that was quite an old route, but this is kind of a slightly newer one, although it's been out for a few years now. When we do the sort of the Preston Carlisle section of this route, and I'll come to that bit later on, of course, but basically we will be, it'll be a scenario. So again, just downloaded from the Creators Club, and I'll just kind of alter the time for kind of make it slightly more realistic. It'd be nice if we could do this continuously into Wigan on this route. You always end up with, like, you know, sort of, I think with every route it's like, well, where do you start it, where do you end it? But it'd be nice if these things joined up. And although we kind of have got a signal stop and we'll have a red signal, I suspect that to get down onto the West Coast Main Line, I should imagine that's not untypical, really. Again, apologies for the route author, because the chances are these little signalling glitches that I'm getting have probably been fixed ages ago. I wish there was some easy way, and if there is, let me know. But sometimes it's like, how do you find out what have I installed, what have I not installed? And sometimes it's just a little patch. So we're leaving the Chatmoss line. This will ultimately take us onto the West Coast Main Line. I mean, you'll notice a kind of a discrepancy in terms of track texturing going on in a minute, but that's kind of the next part. I've got another TP service. So the Bolton line has to be closed today. There must be some sort of engineering works going on. So we are now technically on a different route. This is another Alan Thomson Simulation route, the so-called missing link. I think officially it's known as West Coast Main Line, Midlands and North West. And it all came about because a few years back we had bits of the West Coast Main Line. We could do London Euston as far as Stafford via the Trent Valley line, but we didn't have the bit leading up to Preston. Of course, we could do Preston to Glasgow. I just paused for a bit there because I've had tremendous trouble actually getting this scenario to work. It's what I've modified slightly, but that particular point that we've just been over, I've had it derailing on me, and now it's working. I can only assume, because we've got an Avanti West Coast service which will pass us shortly, and I can only assume that the signalman, if I can say the word, was actually changing the point in the middle of us going over the point. I don't know whether that's a thing in Train Sim Classic. Yeah, going back to this route, so it adds in the core route from Stafford through to Preston, and it means that we can do it then either via the main line through Mainline, or we can go via Stoke, or you can do that bit as well from Rugby to Birmingham New Street as well. And we've got the section between Crewe and Liverpool Lime Street as well. Slightly different track texturing compared with the last one. It'd be nice to get a bit of consistency actually, and just that feeling that actually it's precisely the same route. But other than that, it's been done to a really good standard, and I think you'll see the quality of the stations along the way as well. So we'll be not stopping but passing through Wigan North Western and Warrington Bank Quay. Whilst we're on the subject of this route, of course, in Train to World 6, and it's on the 0 to 3 months roadmap, so we should be able to do it before Christmas. We'll be able to do Crewe to Preston from Just Trains, and of course, okay, it's set in British Rail Blue Days, but that's going to be interesting because nearly every intercity service, you know, then and now, this is obviously an exception as a Trans Pennine service, but tend to stop at Wigan, North Western and Warrington Bank Quay. So I'm sure somebody will do a Trans Pennine scenario. Again, if you kind of watch bits of the video but not all of them, it is true to say that the real service would normally go via Bolton, so we'd join the West Coast Main Line a lot further north than we are, but we don't have that Bolton section in the game at the moment. Down to 80 miles an hour for this curve, and this takes us into Wigan North Western. And whilst we're at Wigan, it always makes me think of the YouTuber G Loves Trains, and I'm sure a lot of you as rail enthusiasts will have watched her channel, but she produces some fantastic videos, very, very well edited, really professional, but just a real enthusiasm, and you kind of get the sense that she just enjoys both making the videos and doing the train journeys just as much for each new one that comes around. I'm going to try and stick to 110 at top speed because, of course, we aren't a tilting train, so I don't think we would have allowance for 125 miles an hour. Only a relatively short distance to Preston before we will rejoin Train Sim World for the section between Preston and Carlisle. I hope you enjoy the idea of this combination. I know it's different games, different graphics and everything, but it does at least mean that we can complete these journeys, and I'm a bit obsessive about that sort of thing. It's like I hate just the idea of just doing bits and pieces of journeys, and it's good to be able to join things up. I think it's quite satisfying. Okay, in this section when we get as far as Carlisle, we're not going to be coming to the buffer stops, but it kind of feels like a natural changeover point perhaps. But I do quite like the idea of journeys where you can see the buffer stops at the very end, and it really does feel like journey's end. Blue skies. I mean, I know with the Armstrong Powerhouse weather pack, and also if you play on Train Sim World, you play on all seasons really, and I know some people love to play services in the rain, but I just enjoy it when it's in the sunshine. I feel as though when I've been on a journey in the sunshine in real life, it's the most wonderful experience. What was I saying about trying to keep to 110? There we go. Well, at least the game doesn't tell us off anyway. I do think, I have to say, I like with Train Sim World that it's clever enough to realise the type of train that you're driving, and actually kind of keeps the speedometer, the speed limit signs in check for you, so that you, with when you've got your HUD going, it's kind of telling you what your maximum speed that you're allowed to drive. So we've got another at least significant speed limit down to 75. I mean, when I'm kind of driving and I'm YouTubing or doing a live stream, I quite enjoy the non-stop runs in many ways. But when I'm kind of driving for fun, it's quite nice to actually have stops every so often. I think I find it slightly intimidating when it comes up that the next stop is like 60-70 miles away. And it's also really nice as well to do these things in different parts, and it's great to be able to present this video to you as one full run, but it's just nice to find just a chunk of time. And you can kind of give yourself an hour on a Sunday morning, such as I'm recording this particular leg of the journey, and just a bit of spare time to run it. Of course, then the frustration kicks in that the hour becomes an hour and a half because of Train Sim Classic playing up, as it invariably seems to do. I'm guessing as to why I had the issue at that point, but that's my hunch. I can't for the life of me understand why it would be a problem. Be interested to see as well with the Just Trains route, with Crewe to Preston. I'm guessing, okay, I know it's slightly different eras, but I'm assuming that there is a little bit of a collaboration between Just Trains and All Aboard Studios in terms of the Crewe asset that they've used. Maybe one's a bit more modified slightly for modern day purposes, but it would seem utterly pointless as far as I'm concerned to have a completely brand new Crewe built for you know, the other route, as it were. I suppose it's got to be substantially different than the 1950s Spirit of Steam one, because clearly Crewe had changed quite a lot in that era until the 1980s. But even then, I don't know. I haven't got Spirit of Steam actually at the moment, but I'm guessing it might have been kind of a starting point for the model. How you get that little thing with the longer platforms, and clearly not used nowadays, but you have that like kind of fenced off and then bit with weeds on where they aren't obviously allowed for public access, but it's sort of many years ago, back in the days of longer express services that would have used the full extent of the platform. I think I'm probably more excited about the sections of the West Coast Main Line, i.e. Crewe to Preston and Crewe to Birmingham, different eras, but than the Riviera line in some ways. Although I am looking forward to that though, because it is such a stunning part of the country, and that's going to provide entertainment. And I think the fact that we'll be able to do both the Paignton branch and the Plymouth branch as well is going to be good. Bit of variety, and that's kind of what you need. You don't want sort of a end-to-end run where more or less you're restricted to driving one train, and there also feels like a bit of a point to the journey as well. You know, Exeter St David's is a fairly substantial station, and both Paignton and Plymouth seem like natural endpoints. So I presume this is the approach to Preston. Of course, it's got a bit more cloudy as well as the journey has progressed. I've got a feeling when we rejoin Trade Sim World it's going to be a bit more sunny, but now we do have a filter, so we're down to 30 miles an hour for the approach into Preston. Again, you've got to be a tad careful, because, you know, I'm kind of thinking in my mind that the next signal will have cleared to green, but you can never be quite sure about such things. Distinctive approach over the famous bridge coming into Preston, and of course this was a completely brand new model built by the Alan Thomson team, because the original West Coast Main Line over Shapford Train Sim Classic was a kit bash job, and it was okay, but it wasn't perfect, and this added a lot more realism to it. Of course, now we also have the one built in Train Sim World as well, and Preston's become a bit of a base for Just Trains routes. I've heard one or two people saying, oh no, not Preston again, but it adds a little bit of consistency. We are coming into halt into Preston, and then we will carry on north to Carlisle in Train Sim World. I mean, I'm going to call it 5 because that is it is as I'm recording it, but if you're watching this a few weeks away from the original recording, then it might well be that Train Sim World 6 is already out. Okay, so welcome back to Preston on Train Sim World 5 for the final part of this run through to Carlisle. Of course, we're a Glasgow bound service, and we are roughly about the same time, and we're in the same platform at least as we ended with the Train Sim Classic bit into Preston. Now, of course, the route itself set in the 1980s as built by Just Trains, but the beauty of the scenarios on Creators Club is that you can actually set it in a different era if you like. I mean, this has been done by, I don't know if it's pronounced Gelman or Yelman, but Jelman on Creators Club. And it says modern WCML, West Coast Main Line, TPE. Although, funnily enough, when you go to load up the scenario, it just calls itself WCML. Of course, in theory, there's nothing stopping you from actually just doing a modern piece of stock like this, or the Pendolino in free roam mode, but prefer the idea of the scenario from Creators Club, because that way we're going to see other modern trains to go alongside it. I don't know how busy it's going to be in terms of other trains. Should have made notes on the church and is it Wahlberg? Something like that, isn't it? Now, the one slight advantage of driving the 802 in this particular case, rather than say the Pendolino, is that you can kind of go at your 110 and not feel as though you're doing something wrong, because if you do the Pendolino, you're either going to drive it at 110 or you're going to do 125, and you're going to be constantly told that you're speeding, so this kind of feels about right. It's kind of interesting, you know, we start off with the Preston suburbs, and even when we get out into the countryside, it's sort of normal English sort of rolling hills and general countryside. But once we go beyond Lancaster and we get into the real midst of the Lake District and go towards Oxenholme and Penrith, of course Oxenholme for the southern part of the Lake District, and the branch of course to Windermere. And it really is spectacular, and you go through T-Bay and the Loon Gorge, that's all to come. And I've often said and made this point, I'm sure, but I think sometimes, okay, we're very much like a stopping service, but you've kind of got a good run at it, but with a fairly frequent stop, and I think that kind of makes things more interesting. And that's kind of the one thing that's going for it in terms of Peterborough to Doncaster. If you can load a scenario up where it's basically stopping at all the principal stations along the way, then you kind of feel you've got a bit more to do. I don't mind so much when you've got sort of plenty going on, particularly when I'm doing the live streams and you've got all the chat going on. There's always plenty to talk about. But if you're just kind of chilling out, you're just doing a ride, then this is kind of the nice sort of ride, really. And just every so often you've got to stop and store as well to keep you occupied. And it's always a massively exciting thing to look forward to, a Just Trains Trainsim World release, and this will be the third year that we've had that to look forward to after Blackpool branches. And even with that, it wasn't just Preston to Blackpool North. We introduced Blackpool South into the game as well, and all the fun of having all the roller coasters and bits and pieces and the pleasure beach. And again, another little masterstroke was putting in the branch to Ormskirk as well, so it just added something to it, and of course the pace is quite fun to drive as well. And then last year this came out, and I can't believe it's not quite 12 months yet, but again it was one of those things when Trainsim World 5 first came out and we knew that Preston to Carlisle was coming kind of before Christmas, then we knew we got something greatly to look forward to. And then this year it'll be Preston to Crewe as well, so that's going to be really, really exciting. I'd love somebody to be able to sort of change the speed limits on this and produce a version where basically you had a proper 24-hour Pendolino timetable, perhaps throw in some of the northern services, and just have that little variation between the new and the old. I don't know in reality what difference the line is nowadays compared with how it was in the 80s, but you know, I'd be happy to compromise that differing detail, but it'd be lovely to have a timetable that does both. And then we're already going to have quite a bit of the West Coast Main Line done then, aren't we? So I'm just turning it up a little bit. I always remember that it always sounds dead quiet, this train on the stream. This is with a mod installed as well, so I think we get slightly better bogey sounds. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the West Coast Main Line, okay, differing eras, but in a few weeks' time we're going to get Crewe to Birmingham New Street, so effectively we'll have London Euston to Milton Keynes, Birmingham New Street to Crewe, and then Crewe to Preston. And again, plenty of scenario possibilities there, because, well, sorry, and Preston to Carlisle as well, I should say. How could I forget that, seeing as though we're actually on the Preston Carlisle bit. But, you know, sort of new or old, that opens up the possibilities of doing through runs from, well, not quite through runs, but pretty extensive runs from London Euston through to Carlisle. But there are services, I mean, I don't know if there's any services that actually terminate at Carlisle, but there's certainly ones that terminate at Lancaster. And another one that would be suitable, certainly for 80s running, would be London Euston to Blackpool North, and that'd be quite a good bit of fun, because we could do, suddenly then you'd have Crewe to Preston, and you're going to be able to do this anyway, you know, even with the default timetable really. Do Crewe to Preston, and then switch across to Preston to Blackpool. And I don't know whether back in the 1980s you actually have Blackpool services going via Birmingham New Street. I think when we did this as a southbound run, I've got a feeling that was in the morning as well, and I remember there being a comment made about, well, perhaps this was a early evening run with that sunlight. Slightly different going northbound, but still looks really good. Really hoping when the 802 comes out, or sorry, the 805 comes out, that we have cruise control. Well, both actually, the 802 and the 805. We have cruise control fitted. That would be pretty decent. Got a bit of brake on ready for our reduction down to 75 miles an hour for our stop at Lancaster's, not too far away, 2.5 miles. I remember being so excited when this West Coast Main Line over Shap first came out for Train Sim Classic. Seems like ages ago now. Yeah, this run's certainly going to keep us occupied with all the stops, as it were. And I'll tell you what, this is a lot easier than when we do it with the 86, although, or the 87, but I must admit there's a great deal of fun involved with driving the first generation AC electrics. And to be honest, I should have kept an idea or a thought on the timetable, but I think the problem is because of the diversion. Oh, there's Lancaster Castle up on the right. You get a much better view actually from the cab of this, well, the pseudo 802, I suppose we can call it. And that's one bonus actually of doing this run, because we are really going to see this in all its glory. Still managing to speed a bit. It's one of those situations, it's a funny little station to get into, because you've got this 15 mile an hour, and then just to make sure as a driver you're going to be caught out slightly, you're on a bit of a downhill gradient as well. I don't know what differences Lancaster Station would be in real life. You're not going to get those old Travellers Fare buffets though, that's for sure. There's one glitch, and I've said it 1,000 times, but we can actually get the camera not to lurch around like the way it does, like that. Just really irritating. at least we do have passengers getting on and off. And I think that was one of the early issues with Creators Club scenarios, where the passengers just refused to board. From what I can gather so far with the Train Sim World 6 previews, and of course as I'm recording this, I've only seen the German preview, Leipzig to Dresden, but as you're watching this, the chances are you'll have witnessed the Morristown preview as well. But certainly in the first one, I think Matt Pedalson said there's not going to be any massive changes to the passengers. I think hopefully they've solved some of the problems, but it doesn't look as though it's universal, and presumably you're not going to see any changes with the older routes for the moment. We are desperate for something sorting with passengers on West Coast Mainline South, particularly at London Euston, where you don't get any passengers nowadays, it seems. As far as like cabride videos, probably the first time that I ever watched a video of this was that Royal Scot video from Video 125. Very good it was too. And we took the Class 87 on a run from London Euston to Glasgow Central. I say they did, or at least they filmed it, and it was the Royal Scot used to be, I think it was the 10 o'clock departure traditionally from Euston. Might have varied a little bit over the years, but it was non-stop from Euston to Preston, so it was one of the rare expresses back then that didn't stop at Crewe. Not sure they all do now, actually. I've got a feeling that some don't. But if you're not watching the premiere live, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you like these Train Sim Classic, Train Sim World, oh that's a neutral section by the way, mix? And I know there's a massive difference in terms of quality, in terms of the way the routes look, but at least it gives us the chance to drive longer routes. I believe that's Morecambe Bay, and of course in this route you can actually take the DMU and take the branch line out to Morecambe. I have no idea whether we've got the maximum potential in terms of other trains in this scenario or not, but I mean, I do know that when I did a Pendolino run, part of the when I did that full Euston to Glasgow, which was the 500 subscriber stream. It turned out to be over 6 hours with trying to get it all in the one night. But that had quite a lot of AI with northern livery stuff as well, 158s, possibly 150s. Here's Carnforth. I'll have a brief encounter with Carnforth. Kind of not too far off away from the Lake District, and then the magic really does start to take shape, although you can see already that we're starting to get scenically pretty nice now. And who says that driving a modern train like this can't be still enjoyable? Shows what a multitasker I am, trying to show you the outside view and the speed has dropped back to 102 miles an hour. We are quite undulated because we had a bit of an uphill stretch, and now we're downhill. And we are going to go up the climb to Shap Summit, and of course in steam days that would have been a heck of a challenge, both Shap and Beatock. Of course, Beatock on the section between Carlisle and Glasgow Central. So I did mention it in an earlier part of the video, but again conscious that some of you might just have skipped through bits and bobs and not watched it all. But if I do a part 2 of this scenario, and you know, I'm not kind of expected to do it in the next few days or maybe the next few weeks, but there's kind of a choice really. We can either carry on from Carlisle to Glasgow Central, do it completely in Train Sim Classic and make it as kind of as close to the day-to-day run as possible, you know, allowing for the fact that we've been via Chatmoss, which of course is unusual but not something that hasn't happened. Or the other option is to take it to I think it's Newton, and then we face a bit of a diversionary. And again, there is videos around the line on the Cathcart Circle where West Coast Mainline trains have been diverted, so we could then be diverted along there and get us into Glasgow Central on Train Sim World. It'll probably be Train Sim World 6 by the time we get there. nice to be able to present this to you as kind of one video, but I've been able to do it in a fairly leisurely fashion and in stages of an hour's drive here and there, so it's taken me 3 days really. But then it's kind of more satisfying for me to then see it on YouTube as one video, and it then only then does it become a complete run. When you look at some of the outside views, you're just conscious of just, okay, it's obviously a lot of countryside, so it's not quite as bad as, you know, building a really busy urban area for long stretches. But I love how they've made the effort to put kind of farm buildings in, even in the distance, the houses in, even in the distance. It's not just pottering, or I'll say pottering, but it's just not just about stuff that's been put in that's really just adjacent to the line. So we're not too far away from Oxenholme, which of course is the southern branch, or the southern part of the Lake District. So you would change here for Windermere. I think I'm right in saying as well that the track is completely laid on the Windermere branch, and I don't know whether it's actually a fact, but kind of assuming that when they first thought about creating Preston to Carlisle, it might well have been that they were hoping, with, if time allowed, that they could put the Windermere branch in. Maybe it'll happen one day. And again, thinking back to the theme of the 1980s and when the route was built, we just need another. Oh, here we go. Here's another train at last. I mean, I was really hoping for the, I've forgotten the name of the studios now, but there was a intention of bringing out a Peak Forest sort of diesels timetable, and that would have included all new Class 104, which would have looked right at home at Buxton on the Peak Forest route, but probably, oh excuse me, would have looked quite nice here as well. But I'm almost getting the impression, I won't say that it's been completely abandoned. I think, to be fair, it's a very small team. I think we did hear some news a few months back saying that they were hopefully still working on it. I think they just announced it too early. That was the issue, really. And here is Oxenholme. So more often than not, this is a Class 397 service in real life, but the 802s have been known to pop up. Yeah, something really stylish about this livery. It should, in theory, be too much, but I don't know why. But I quite like it. And then waiting on platform 3 is the Windermere branch. There are passengers waiting, but no DMU there at the moment. Okay, obviously, because it's built in the 80s, we've got 80s looking cars. Even stuff like that. Oh, I think basically, if you put the camera in front of a car, then you're going to cause a bit of a delay. For some reason, the cars will stop. But even that, they're really nice. You know, we've got authentic looking stone walls as well. And probably one of the most prettiest parts of the route is coming up now, this section between the southern lakes and the northern lakes at Penrith. And good to see that the screen is... I should have done that earlier on, shouldn't I? But yeah, it's good to see it's got the station stops working. I mean, that is a touch that I probably wouldn't have expected. I kind of would have thought, well, this was the 801 built for the East Coast Main Line, and you kind of thought, well, probably that display would only work on that route, but good that it works on other routes. I always think absolute godsend that you can hear the those noises from outside the cab. That's one piece of reality that I'm glad isn't kind of done in the game, where you can only hear it in the cab, because quite natural you want to see the outside views occasionally, and you do want to be able to hear that AWS. The number of times driving Train Sim Classic where I've been on an outside view and caught out by not being able to hear the AWS. So I'm going to stick to the speed limits as displayed, and I don't know what the differences would be. I know certainly I think the top speed that would be allowed for a non-tilted train even now would be 110, so we're probably not too far off reality, even though this is set in the 80s. Some people that are watching will obviously know in a lot more depth. I'm quite sure about that. I could just watch the view from outside, really. Still a bit stuttery, and you know, that's partly me driving this on an old PC, I guess, but I did notice even well, unless it was my perception, but watching the stream on Wednesday, the first TSW6 preview, it still looked a bit stuttery, and that's clearly on a very high-end Dovetail Games PC. I'm sure it's been commented before that stuttering has actually got worse as the TSW series have progressed. I still feel as though, you know, this has been out not quite 12 months yet, this route, but it was sort of, what was it, October, November time, and I feel as though I've still not driven it enough. A slightly unusual set of runs is possible with the military pack as well. Kind of feel another one of those coming on. Never done this as a Trans Pennine service, but I have been on a Pendolino on this run. I've also done the Caledonian Sleeper as well, although I've always been asleep on this section. Not sure I've ever done this northbound in the daytime in reality. The routine's been fairly similar every time, really. Been on the Caledonian Sleeper, I think 3 times now. Once with the Mark 5s. I sort of enjoyed the meal just beyond Euston. That's kept me going until not quite Crewe, but just a bit before, and then settled into bed, and then I think usually I've been asleep fairly quickly, and then usually woken up round about Edinburgh, then back off to sleep again. This is the lovely bit. There's the M6 motorway on the left. I mean, words fail me sometimes, just how beautiful it is. This area is T-Bay. I get mixed up exactly the difference between T-Bay and Loon Gorge, but I think this is Loon Gorge with that bit down the right hand side. So excited by the scenery, I've forgotten that the speed limit's gone back up to 90 actually, so we've got that, and then we've got 100 coming up. might have seen the River Loon pop in and out a little bit there, but apart from that though, absolutely stunning. I sometimes think as a train journey this is underrated in real life. I mean, you read all sorts of travel guides, guidebooks, whatever it might be, and they're going to make a big case for the Settle and Carlisle line. They're going to talk about the Riviera line, which we'll be able to drive shortly on TSW5 and experience the sea walls at Starcross through Dawlish Warren, Dawlish and onto Teignmouth, and that is obviously beautiful. Another favourite would be the Fort William to Mallaig, and due to Harry Potter in particular, but even before that, experiencing the fantastic Glenfinnan Viaduct. The Cambrian Coast is a personal favourite as well, with particularly Machynlleth, it's pronounced as, through to Piccadilly, but even the bit going the other way down to Aberystwyth. I'd love to see the Cambrian Coast in Train Sim World at some point. But this route, as I say, I think often overlooked, but it's got to be right up there, and I think you can see that with the beautiful nature of the scenery. And okay, we're obviously only going to take this today as far as Carlisle, but even the section north of Carlisle has its beauty as well, because there's more mountains to come. And it's just amazing, the contrast, and you know, you have the spectacular, beautiful scenery here, but think about with the West Coast Mainline journey that started out from Euston and weaving your way through Camden and Wembley and so on. But it's all part of the same line. And kind of sticking to the 1980s theme as well. And okay, we're obviously in a modern train here, but I would be absolutely delighted if we ever got the APT for Train Sim World. I think Just Trains have said, well, it'd be really difficult to source proper sounds, but I think we're going to have to we'd have to have a bit of a compromise there, maybe. I mean, there are enough videos of the thing running, and I think some of it might have to be a bit of a guess, but I'm not too sure how many people would be able to actually pinpoint and say how accurate it was. I think an approximation I'd be reasonably happy with. I think even if he kind of said, right, well, we'll do it with Class 90 sounds, you know, similar era. I think the point is, you know, if you kind of get to the peak of the line at Shap, it's kind of a question then of essentially being downhill all the way to Glasgow pretty much. You have to have all these sort of sidings and stuff either side of the line. I don't know whether they did so much banking, but certainly freight trains would get held in the loops to allow for express passenger services to come through. At the end of the day, it's only basically a two-section main line for large parts. I really should do my research on the quarries as well. Oh, there's the Pride liveried Pendolino. Sorry about the stuttering there. I know there's Hardendale Quarry. I think that's the biggest one, but I don't know for certain which is which. I think from now on we're going to be kind of doing more braking than accelerating, really. We're still very much in the heart of Cumbria. We've got all these lovely stone walls. The understanding is that both with the 802 that's coming out for the Riviera line and the All Aboard Studios 805, we're going to get new sounds, because there was always a feeling that the original Azuma recordings weren't quite it. They weren't quite the best. They always felt a little bit on the quiet side. Just a slight feeling at the moment, as well as I'm recording this, that I mean, there's obviously excitement about TSW6 coming out. I'm still excited, but there is that slight despondency, thinking it feels a bit like TSW5, but with a few added features. Is it really a new game? It's just a rebranding exercise more than anything, isn't it? I think on the last Sunday's live stream that I did, Maze Tays called it right. He said perhaps it's Train Sim World 5.5. There's obviously a huge concentration on, you know, sort of the new routes and getting everything out in time, but the bug fixing just seems to go out the window. And you kind of get the feeling that they just have no time to concentrate on solving problems. I think that does irritate players more than anything. I think it's going to be a case of, you know, I'm going to be highly excited when it first releases, particularly the Riviera line, being able to drive that. And then after that, a couple of weeks later, you're going to be waiting for the next thing to come out then, which UK wise will be Crew to Birmingham, and then beyond that, Crew to Preston from Just Trains. So that's kind of the rest of the year probably in terms of UK stuff. And then when we get towards Christmas, we'll be start thinking about what might come out in the new year. Probably have that rather daft season of reveals that we like what we had last year. Too far away now from our stop at Penrith, which is the northern part of the Lake District. So if you're enjoying the video and you haven't done it before, then please consider liking and subscribing. I'd be tremendously grateful. We are building towards that first 1,000 subscribers. There's the motorway again. It's still the M6 whilst we're in England, because we're still in Cumbria. And then what is it when we get after Carlisle and into Scotland? And it's worth stressing, I reckon there's some people in certainly south of the border who think that Carlisle's in England, but it is in England, it's in Scotland, but it's very much still in England. It's not far off from the border though. You're very quickly into Scotland when you travel up the motorway. And I think I'll say I've never done this journey myself on Trans Pennine Express, so we were talking about G Loves Trains earlier in her YouTube videos, but I'm pretty sure she's done this on the Trans Pennine Express journey. Prepare for our stop, Penrith. Such a different experience. I mean, if you're driving the 86 or even a 47 or one of the older diesels, you kind of put the brakes on, then release them, and then wait a while for the pressure to go off. So you kind of have to keep predicting all the time. But with a modern train, of course, you take off any braking, and that's instant. It's much more refined. So probably not as bad as Morpeth on the East Coast Main Line, where the many years ago the sleeper came to grief when there used to be an East Coast Main Line sleeper. But it's a bit like that with Penrith on the West Coast Main Line. Certainly have to reduce speed, even if you're not stopping. I think that'll do us for a 5-car service anyway. I don't think we've got a target for our destination time wise. Again, just really nicely capturing the architecture and again, just that feeling that the station was like this many moons ago. Would have been just the same in steam days. Just a lot of detail. I like that, an old advert where it's kind of flaked away. This one's got one on though. Discover the heart of nature in the countryside. Oh, I love that. We've got an advert for Weasel Lakes. I like that. Wiser Lakes. It's got to be a take on crunching up cornflakes, doesn't it? Surely. And even with this train, I mean, it's not the most noisiest of trains, but you know, just the sound of the bogies going over the points and that sort of clickety clack sound, and then the electric motors powering up. Yeah, I said about the APT, and there's a great deal of footage, particularly this side of the country, of the APT running from Glasgow Central. And it's always well worth watching the British what do they call them? The British Transport Films production with Peter Purvis in it, the old Blue Peter fame, but he did a good video on this, or he presented a good video on the APT. And I'd have to check again on YouTube whether it's still available, but I can remember an old BBC Horizon documentary that followed the development of the APT as well, and that went through a lot of the pressures that they were facing, because I think the problems with the APT were that obviously by the very name of it, advanced passenger train, you're trying out a lot of new things, and there were one or two teething problems, but I'm sure they could have been fixed. But I think there was a lot of pressure politically from the government, maybe from the press, and it was kind of like, where's this new train, when is it going to run into service? I mean, you look at the Class 805s as a good example. They ran up and down the West Coast Mainline for an absolute age before they were allowed into service, and they ironed out all the little issues and problems. But I think generally, I think that it's kind of one of those things that is laid out as a really bad example, and it's probably been used in courses about how not to do project management. And I probably said this before, I'm sure, on videos, but the weird thing is, had the APT come into service in the early 80s, it would have been a thing of the past now, even if it had been successful. And some people argue that the Class 91 and the Intercity 225 services were kind of a logical successor to it, but I don't really buy that. I think that was something that was completely different. I mean, I'm no engineering expert, that's for certain, so, but to me they weren't the same trains. They certainly didn't even feature tilting, did they? And it was kind of considered, well, it's not so necessary on the East Coast Main Line as on the West Coast Main Line. But actually, I mean, the way this thing handles, this 802, with its acceleration, okay, we shouldn't forget we're running a 5-coach train rather than a full-length Pendolino, but even so, I think acceleration-wise, they are superior, assuming all the physics with the game are accurate, but so it's, I suspect if you kind of run them side by side, even allowing the Pendolino up to 125, it would still be fairly competitive. And I'm sure it doesn't embarrass itself on the workings in real life. not too far away from our final destination, and we'll see the speed limit rapidly dropping as we get towards Carlisle itself, Carlisle Citadel. Although that's kind of the northern extremity of our journey, and in terms of this route, they do have the massive Carlisle Kingsmore yard, which is a bit further north. So if you're doing particularly a southbound run, freight run, then you get to experience the big yard. I think there's a kind of a way of getting round it as well. I mean, most people thought that the logical successor to doing Preston to Carlisle was then to carry the West Coast Main Line forward and finish it off with Carlisle Preston, but they kind of said Just Trains they've got no particular desire to do that. Certainly a long stretch without stations. You kind of have Lockerbie, and then the next one after that I think is Carstairs, and I believe I'm right in saying it's the longest stretch of railway in the country between Lockerbie and Carstairs without a station. Very, very, very quiet indeed. It's probably just as well Journey's End is not too far off. I must admit, quite tired actually recording this on a Monday night after a day at work, and sort of less than 24 hours after the Sunday live stream as well, so might just be taking a slight rest from train driving on the game for a day or two. I think you'll probably be watching this, the premiere on the Thursday night, and while we won't clash with the DTG Morristown preview. So, assuming that I've got my maths right, and it is the Thursday when this premieres, then it means we're exactly a week away from Train Sim World 6 being available. Is that right? Kind of fascinating the fact that the UK route for TSW6 that comes out with the game, the Riviera line, if you bind the advanced version, then you're going to get barely 24 hours from the preview to the game coming out. Even quicker if you're on console, because that will be quicker on the Thursday. So just let's hope it's good. Here's to hoping that it looks finished, that there aren't any major bugs. A few more. Very, very slow arrival into Carlisle with 20 mile an hour. I think I'm right in saying, is it the Settle and Carlisle line that's coming in from the left? So I've enjoyed the run. Would have been nice to have had a few more bits of AI in there, but it served the purpose, and it's the right stock, as it were. I love this station. Reminds me a bit of Stoke Station, actually, although it's a bit bigger. Oh, we're on the outside platform. This always used to be a thing on Train Sim Classic when Carlisle to Glasgow first came out, years and years ago now. But it was as though the inner platforms didn't seem to work properly, so they always seemed to pop you onto this outside platform. I mean, having said that, I can't remember actually on Train Sim World actually coming into this platform. We'll try and stop before this signal. That should do us. Yeah, lovely old station, Carlisle Citadel. Even down to the paving and everything else. Very, very nice. Oh, I haven't unlocked the doors, have I? Hang on. Yeah, I wouldn't have gonna miss there being a few more pieces of AI or other trains, as it were, but not faulting it, because it's always great when somebody else has created a scenario for you to drive on. So there we go. Hope you've enjoyed that. That's something I've been meaning to do really ever since Manchester Airport Commuter came out. I thought, come on, let's do this run from Manchester Airport through to Carlisle, with the potential eventually of going all the way to Glasgow Central. So hope you've enjoyed it, all the various parts, and thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed watching it and you haven't done so before, I'd be really grateful if you would consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Your support is ever massively appreciated. The live stream's usually Sunday at 5 PM, so as I'm recording this, potentially that means one more Train Sim World 5 live stream, 4 hours of driving, and then it'll be TSW6. So hope you can join me for the live streams, and we certainly have a good old chat in those. But for now, from Power Flower Trains and Planes, it's goodbye.